I've been getting requests for months now for a SketchUp training series. If you don't already know me, my name's Alistair Johnson at Freebird Interiors. Now we design, make and fitted furniture from Sheffield, UK. And I've seen for some time that there's a real gap in the market for SketchUp training aimed at UK-based woodworkers using metric. I've put off starting it. I've not been quite sure where to pitch it, but I've just decided let's go right from the beginning. So this video will be helpful to you if you're an absolute beginner. It will also be helpful to you, I think, if you've dabbled with SketchUp. And what I want to do is to show you how to make a simple carcass like this. First off, though, I'm going to just talk you through how to get started downloading SketchUp, how to get hold of it for free, demystifying some of that. And before that, I wanted to show you a little bit about what we do with SketchUp so you know what's possible. And I don't mean this to be intimidating if you're an absolute newcomer, but I just want you to know that if you are considering what sort of software you might move ahead with, that in my opinion SketchUp can do probably everything you're hoping to do. So this is an example of a recent project that we've worked on. We can now draw full carcasses with doors on and show the customer exactly how it's going to be from outside and inside. We can animate the opening of doors, drawers, and we can put hardware in. And the really powerful thing now is that we can use these drawings, which are accurate to the millimetre, to output to cutting lists. So once we've drawn them in SketchUp and they exist in 3D, every one of these parts can be optimized onto a sheet, and we can even tell them to have scribing allowances. So for example, where we've got our scribe strips hitting the wall, it can be drawn to that width, but it can be outputted with an extra 20mm scribe in case of the need to cut it on site. So over the years I've tried different things. My background was in architecture. I tried a piece of software called CabinetSense. In fact, I spent £2,000 on that, which is really made for this cabinetry industry. And I just kept coming back to SketchUp because it's very flexible, intuitive, it looks great in front of customers, you can quickly produce drawings, and that's something we do, is we will draw something like this in front of customers now. And I found that CabinetSense was demanding more and more money, even for what I thought should have been fairly basic features. It's only relatively recently, with the use of certain extensions, that we've got this kind of functionality from SketchUp. So if that's where you want to go, stick with me, because I will be working towards this kind of use of SketchUp, and I'm not going to be giving you stuff you don't need to know that's not particularly relevant to being a woodworker or specifically a fitted furniture maker in the UK. So let's get on to how you get hold of SketchUp. Now I suggest you just type SketchUp download into your web browser. And there are two routes you can go down. I'm going to show you both briefly. The relatively new development with SketchUp is what's called SketchUp Free. That is a web browser based version of it. I'm just going to give you the overview of that, but I'm not going to do most of this tutorial on it because the interface is different to a lot of the other tutorials that you would find online. However, this is a pretty fully featured version of SketchUp. You will have to create a Trimble ID, so you'll have to log in, which you can do with a Google account, and that's no trouble really. That really just allows you to save your files in the Trimble Connect, as it's called. So Trimble now owns SketchUp. There's a lot you can do in here, but it's much the same as what you will see in SketchUp Make, which is what I want to show you mainly. So to get to SketchUp Make, what I actually suggest you do is go to SketchUp Download All. So just Google that and find this web page, sketchup.com/download all. It's a bit hard to find directly on the SketchUp site. Now this gives you a list of all the downloadable desktop versions. The ones at the top you're going to have to pay for, the Pro versions. This is the old SketchUp Make, which they're now discontinuing, so they're not updating this, in favour of the free version on the web. But this is a really great place to start, pretty fully featured, and in fact when you download it you get the Pro version for 30 days, so that causes some confusion. You're actually working on the Pro version, that expires after 30 days, but that just downgrades to Make, which is the free version. So you will continue to be able to use that legally, although strictly not for business purposes ongoing. So you can download your Windows or your Mac version. Before I leave this page, do take note that you can download some quick reference cards here. This one for Pro 2018 will be near enough the same. Choose your Windows or your Mac. I suggest you download and print this and keep this in front of you, because this gives you the keystrokes which will enable you to more quickly go to the tools that you use. So you hit download there on SketchUp Make. I've already done that, so I will bring it up. That's this one. So start using SketchUp down here. It will prompt you to choose a template when you first use it. I suggest you choose the one that's near the top that has this white background and that says it works in millimeters. If you do find yourself in a template that you discover isn't millimeter based, which you'll find once you get drawing, because you'll see down the bottom right there, you see dimensions once you start using drawing tools. If that's not in millimeters, go to Window on a Mac, Model Info. It might be a slightly different place on Windows, but I'm sure you can find it. So Model Info and Units. And then here you can choose the format and the units. So personally I'm usually working in millimeters, and personally I prefer for it to just be rounded to the nearest millimeter, but you can choose very high levels of precision. So to start with, let's familiarise ourselves with the workspace. What you've got here are axes. So if you think back to school days working on graphs, you had your x-axis going along the bottom. So red is x, your y-axis going that way, green is y, and the z-axis is heading upwards for 3D space. This is the sort of thing that will be helpful as you get more advanced in SketchUp, but just a basic understanding is fine for now. You've noticed I'm spinning around in space. Now what I'm doing right now is called Orbit, and you can see how the cursor has changed. You can find that tool in the tool set over here. If you don't have that on your screen, you can go to Tool Palettes. Again, you might have to hunt around a little bit on Windows, but you go Tool Palettes, Large Tool Set, and that will bring this up. So down here are your navigation tools for positioning yourself in 3D space. So Orbit you can just click on like that. You can also hit O on the keyboard, O for Orbit, and if you're using a mouse with a roller wheel in the middle, then if you press that roller wheel down and hold it, then that will activate Orbit even if you're using a different tool. The roller wheel on the mouse will also zoom in and out, so I'm rolling that back towards me, rolling it away from me to zoom in. The other tool for navigating around the space that's very useful is the pan tool, or the hand tool. The keystroke for that is H. You will notice that if you hang around over any of these tools on the toolbar, you'll see the keystroke in brackets after the name of the tool. You'll also find these on the sheet that I suggested you print out. So the hand tool will just drag what you're looking at sideways or up and down, whereas the Orbit tool is spinning you around in space. Now it's worth noting that there's a special feature to this man. Now he's here as standard to give a sense of scale as you start drawing, but it's specially programmed to always face you. If you're working with a box or something, you would be able to sort of turn around to the back of it. Well, let's get started drawing a basic carcass. So select your rectangle tool. It's fairly self-explanatory what these tools do. You can click on it here or you can hit R. When you're ready to draw it, it's giving you a little hint of the face on which the rectangle will be drawn. Now, one of the great things about SketchUp is it's very intuitive. It allows you to just start drawing into 3D space, and it makes certain assumptions when it does that. So the plane, if you're thinking like the floor plane that you're looking at, so the view is most orientated towards the floor plane, that's where it's assuming you want to draw this rectangle. So if we start drawing, that's where it's going to be. Just hit escape to cancel that. If I was to be facing more upwards, then it automatically assumes that I probably want to draw more in that plane. You'll get used to this. Just hit H to pan back to get myself in position. So R for rectangle. Now the way that I recommend you draw is you click and release, and then the action is in progress, and the size of the rectangle will be set when you click again. Now you can see the size that you're drawing by looking down at the bottom right there. So that's currently 766 by 766 millimeters. That's just fairly arbitrary, it's just where I'm floating in space. It's also giving me a helpful guide by showing me that it's square. But I can break away from that, and that now is a golden section. So that's sort of traditionally a well-proportioned rectangle. So I can just click and make the rectangle, but to work with precision, so I'm just going to hit Control Z to undo that. To work with precision, it's better that I tell it the exact dimensions I want it to be. So the dimensions box down at the bottom right there, it will read out what you're doing, but it will also receive instructions. Now the way you give it instructions is you don't have to click into it or anything, you simply start typing. So I've activated a rectangle by clicking once and releasing, and I'm going to make this rectangle, let's say 500 by 600 millimeters. You don't have to type millimeters because you've already set that up as the units that you're working in. So it's 500, 600. Hit enter. Now it may be helpful before you type in the sizes to just observe the long and short direction. So you see how I'm dragging a rectangle out here, you can clearly see which is long and which is short, and you can see in the dimensions box that the long dimension is coming first. So that's actually the X dimension followed by the Y dimension. Often it's useful simply to start dragging out the shape and just check which way round you're going to need to type the dimensions in. So now if I wanted this to be, say, 1000 by 100, I've just typed that in, 1000, 100, and then I've hit enter. So hitting enter does the job of just clicking to finish. You don't have to then click once you've typed the dimensions in. Now let's make this rectangle the base of our cabinet. So now we're going to go to a 3D operation. So you've effectively just drawn a 2D rectangle within 3D space. We now want to give it some thickness. And you do this using the push-pull tool. So you can click on it in the toolbar, or you can go to the keystroke P. Clicked on that. I'm hovering over surfaces, and the surface that goes dotty is the one that I'm going to work on. So click and let go. And then I am in process of extruding this face into a 3D shape. Now there's just one dimension in the bar down at the right there, you see. So I can just type 18 millimeters for my board thickness, hit enter, and I've got my 18 millimeter thick base. I mentioned their faces. The terminology in SketchUp is that you're working with edges and faces. So a line is an edge, and you can individually select that. Now I've gone back to the pointer tool by hitting spacebar, and that's a very useful keystroke to know. So it tells you there as you hover over it. So anytime you've got a tool active, you can just hit spacebar to go back to the selection tool. And I've hit the middle roller button to orbit. So this starts to become second nature to position yourself in space. So yes, as I was saying, you've got your edges, which you can just select by clicking on, and your faces, which can only exist when they're bounded by edges. And faces will automatically appear when you create a 2D shape which is bounded by edges. But you can individually select each of these and you can delete them. So if you just select that and hit backspace or delete, that'll delete. But you see it's had to delete the faces that was bounding. So Control Z or Command Z on the Mac, that undoes that. Now we're going to start drawing the sides of this cabinet. Let me just delete that. And once I've drawn them, I want to talk to you about grouping your geometry, which is very important in SketchUp. In fact, if you don't do it, things will be a lot harder for you. Let me draw something else and this will start to make sense. I'm going to deliberately draw the side away from the base. So let's make that 18mm thick on its edge, 600mm. And then P for push tool, or push pull I should say. I'm going to extrude that out, let's say 800mm, hit enter. So I've got my two objects here that I want to start putting together. Now to put them together, let me just delete that man. To put them together I need to select one and move it to the other. Now there are a few ways of selecting. You can just click on a single item, or to select a lot you can drag a bounding box. So I've gone back to my pointer tool and see now, yes, so I'm just dragging, and whatever is contained within the box, if I've dragged from left to right, will be selected. So that's selected all that geometry. So if I just do that, it doesn't select anything. If I was to drag from right to left, then whatever is touching the box will be selected. So that's selected the parts that are touching, but it hasn't selected the lines at the top there. So to bring these two items together, I can select one of them. I have to be careful because I just selected that line over there. Select one and then drag it together. And this is where we'll start to get problems because we haven't grouped geometry. So that seems to be okay. However, if I now want to independently edit one of these sides or move it elsewhere, I can't really do that because it's stuck together. So this line now has become shared. It's just one line. And if I try to individually select that and move it, which I'm doing with, I should say I'm doing with the move tool. So that's keystroke M. And SketchUp has given me a little bit of help because it's showing me these endpoints to grab. You see how it's sticking together and it's affecting the geometry of the side there. So I'm just going to escape from that. I'm going to do Command Z or Control Z to undo that. So what I really want to do is to independently group these sets of geometry. The way to do that is you start by selecting, which you can also do by triple clicking. So that's actually my preferred method. Double click will select the face and the edges around it. Triple click will select all of the geometry that's connected to what you're clicking onto. Once that's selected, you can right click and go to make group. And what that means is that when you single click on that now, it's considered as one entity and it's no longer sticky, so it's independent within itself. So let's do that to the side here as well. Triple click that, right click, and down here make group. Now you can also go to make group under the edit menu. It's greyed out now because I've already made that a group. So now we've got these two independent entities, we can move them together and they won't stick. Let me just show you the move tool because I think I went a bit quickly over that before. So the move tool is over here, it's keystroke M, and the geometry that you've got selected is the one that will move when you activate the tool. So like most tools, I'm going to just click release, do the operation and then click again to position it. So whenever I move, I'm always wanting to work off a precise reference point so I can precisely place the part. It's worth knowing that the move tool will work from anywhere, so you can just click in space. So if I just click over here, then I'm bringing that part with me. So I can just click randomly, and I can also tell it a distance to move, again by simply typing in. So if I just wanted to move it 100 millimeters, so I've set the direction with that dotted line, that's telling me it's in the direction of the red axis. I've typed in 100 and I've hit enter, so that is a way of moving. But most often I'm wanting to take a precise point which I know will meet another precise point, which is indicated there by that circle. Now that process is called inferencing. SketchUp's very clever at giving you a little bit of help. So it will let you know when you are, if you were to click, you are on that line. It's sort of snapping to that, even if you're like a few pixels away as you're moving the cursor. It will let you know when you hit the midpoint, so that's the midpoint symbol, and it'll let you know with a different symbol when you're on an end point. So that's the end of a line or a few lines where they meet. So I've precisely positioned that side where I need it to be. Now I want to create another side that's the same. So using the move tool again, rather than redrawing this, I can simply copy move it. So you start the move operation in the way we said. I'm going to click it from this corner now. While that's in progress, I'm just going to hit Alt or Option on the keyboard. And that has, if you see there's a little plus next to the move tool, that's converted the move tool to the copy move tool. If I hit Alt again, it's just moving it. So I can do that mid-operation. And I'm just going to reference that to exactly where it needs to be, click and complete the operation. So in a similar way, I can take my base, I've just been using keystrokes there, spacebar to go to the pointer tool, click to select it because it's grouped, and then M for move, take my reference point, click, hit Alt or Option on the keyboard to copy it. And now in fact you can see I should have clicked the other corner because now I can't precisely position it. So what I could do is just place it there, and just to show you again the way that you can work with the move tool, I've got that part selected. I'm just going to click randomly anywhere. I've set my direction. It's sort of snapped to the blue direction, which is the Z axis, the up and down axis, so I know that it's sliding perfectly vertically. And having set that direction, I'm just going to type in 18, and that's now exactly where it should be. So now I just need to draw my back panel, and let's assume that it's going to be an inset panel. So I'm going to hit R for rectangle. Again, using inferencing or snapping, so it's telling me that's on the end point, so I know that's exactly where it needs to be. And as I draw the rectangle, it will just guess where I want it to be lined up, which plane it wants to be drawn in. So here it's assuming that I just want it to be stuck to that face. Here it's again sticking to that face, which would make a sort of angled rectangle. As I come over to here, it's snapping again to where I want it to be. So click to do that. P for push-pull, and I'm going to push that in. Let's say it is an 18mm back panel. So although you can't see it, I'm pushing in that direction. It is actually pushing. I come this way, it's going that way. So once I've set my direction, I can just then type in the actual distance I want it to extrude. So I'm typing in 1818, hit enter, clicking the wheel on the mouse to orbit, and there's my back panel as it should be. Now note, when you use things like the orbit tool or the hand tool, just hit H there, it well, what I was going to say actually is, so you see I was on push-pull. When you use the orbit tool on the mouse, it reverts to the tool that you were using. If you go right ahead and select it, either by clicking on it or by using the keystroke, then it stays on that tool, and you'd have to use the correct keystroke like P to go back to push-pull. I'm actually going to hit spacebar, which takes me to the pointer, which tends to be the most useful thing. I'm going to select that, which, as I said, my preference is the triple click. I'd like to maybe just orbit round to check that the rear face is not selected, so I'll probably just double click. So triple click, that's all selected, right click to make that a group, and there we have our carcass. Well, I think that's about it for now. There's certainly lots more I could tell you, but what would be great is if you give me feedback on what's been helpful, anything that this has helped you to understand, or anything that I've perhaps skimmed over too quickly. And do tell me if there's anything in particular that would be a great next step for you to learn, and I'll see if I can feed that into the videos that are coming up. I'm going to build this into a series. Some or possibly most of it will ultimately be on my Patreon site that I'm going to launch, but I'll try to keep putting helpful content out here for free, and perhaps directing the slightly more advanced content to Patreon for a small subscription. So look out for that. I'll be announcing more details about that before too long. Thanks for watching.